Hi, this is Shallow Child and you're watching Future Music, and the guys have come down today to check out my new setup, which is a bit different from anyone that watched the Dave Spoon one from a few years ago. We're going to go through a couple of tracks today, talk about some nerdy stuff with the gear and whatever, and I hope it's of use to you. First track I want to go into today is my version of the XX Angels, which wasn't an official remix actually. I was listening to the XL Recordings documentary, which was on Radio 1 a few months ago. It was just before the XX album dropped, and at the end of the documentary I heard Angels for the first time ever, and I immediately thought I need to get my hands on this because there's so many elements. The way obviously the XX make their music, it's quite open, and lots of space, and you know, most people know the XX and what they do, so I won't go on about that. But basically immediately I could pick out a lot with the Angels track that I could do something with, literally just for me to DJ with, to start with, and I just want to go through that with you now. So basically the original, if you haven't heard it, if you've been under a rock or you're just not into the XX or whatever, which is fair enough, is like this. Guitars, no drums, great voice, spacey effects, you know, it's all kind of in there. And it's also about 80 or 90 BPM, something like that. So there you go, there's the other bit. So basically, obviously, first thing, I'm very fussy with speeding up vocals. If I get a remix that is either 170 BPM or if it's like 90 or 100 BPM, before I say yes, I will do the remix, I have to get the stems and stretch them to my sort of tempo, which is 124 to 126 sort of area. And make sure that they're going to sound all right, because personally it's just me. If they're going to sound funny, I just don't want to do it, and you never know really. Depends on the delivery of the vocal, depends on effects levels, all these kind of things when you stretch it. But fortunately with this, although there wasn't any stems because I just did it from the stereo master from the album, as soon as I put it into Ableton, which is where I do all my stretching, it sounded great. So I started chopping up the main elements after I got it out of Ableton and started layering things up and adding my sort of Shadow Child style drums to it, and immediately I sort of knew that it was gonna come together quite quickly, which it did. Just to be clear, this was completely unofficial at the time, and it was like a VIP thing for me to DJ with, and although it isn't still isn't official, the XX gave their thumbs up to it, and we did like a giveaway with it and all that kind of stuff, so it's pretty nice for them to give their endorsement to it. First thing I knew that I wanted to do was to chop up the guitar line, which you just heard just then on the clip. The way I did this in Logic 9, so this is my first time going back to Logic 9 for a while, so excuse me if I'm falling over on a couple of things, but this is the guitar line. So you can probably see on the screen there, I've chopped it up and repeated stuff. And what I've done is recreated what the guitar actually did in the original, but I wanted it to sound a bit more sampled, a bit more mechanical, if you like, rather than just the 4-bar phrase of the original guitar. So that's why I did this. I picked the best of each note and did that with it. And around that, I actually started playing with the drums, because sometimes with tracks I just go straight in on the drums. That's how I learned to make my music, was on the sort of the old Roland drum machines. It would always be drums first and doing that step sequencer kind of thing. So that's why I still use Reason. I love Reason. It's like the backbone of all my tracks, especially for drums and sometimes bass lines and stuff like that. And immediately sort of started playing around with these drum samples, which aren't just to give a little percussive thing, and then gradually started to introduce more things. And the way I always do that in Reason, I'm not going to reprogram it all now, but you can probably see, if you're familiar with Reason, that I've used 2, 3, is there another? No. There's 3 re-drums there running all the drum parts. And I always like to split things up into sections, things that I'm going to want to have control over in my arrangement. So kick and clap normally go together. Hi-hats, shakers, that kind of percussion goes on another device. And then if there's any kind of tuned percussion to anything like toms, I didn't really use congas or anything like that for a long time, but anything like that will go on another re-drum, because for me they're just 3 different elements of drum patterns that I like to have layered. So that's why I'm not cramming it full of, each re-drum full of stuff. So yeah, so quickly got the kind of vibe going on the track, which was sounding like this. And then the vocals, I mean, this is the thing, well, I haven't got remix stems or anything for this. I had to be kind of creative with the samples, with EQing things out, layering stuff, and also with the effects as well. So I used, this was the first vocal sample that I used. Let me just extend that out a bit. So when you hear it like that, it sounds quite raw. There's even like a click on the sample there. But by the time it's layered up with effects and stuff, you know, you don't notice it so much. Also did the classic deep house pitch down, which is just using the vocal transformer, which comes with Logic, and it's still in Logic X as well, this, if you've not seen it. So that gave me that kind of layer. And then this orange one is, rather than sending the effects off on a bus, which I could have done, I basically just did another layer with a real strong sidechain on it and real kind of spacey. And I've used the Fab filter on this. This is the old Timeless plugin. I love all their stuff. It feels really creative. It's not just a grey box with a couple of sliders on it. They're really good plugins to use, basically. And Logic Space Designer is what's making that up. And then layered together, sounds like this. So nice and spacey. And then in the track, you don't hear that click. I shouldn't have left that click, but it's there. Okay, and then the next part was introducing the guitar. So the guitar that I've already played you is the kind of breakdowny part in the track. Actually, I forgot about this bit. I've basically set up the whole of the first verse that she sings here through this kind of mad sort of delay, and you can't quite make out anything that she's saying, but it's just part of the sort of the vibe of the kind of track. The atmospheric of it is the word, and that's just being messed up with tape delays again. Timeless and a bit of Space Designer. So that isn't actually the verse. The verse actually hits after that. But if I just play this section, you'll get, oops, you'll kind of get it a bit more. Let's start it from there. So it's kind of just rolling around in the background, and then you get the verse. It's just a way of leaving it less sparse. Again, still using this just effect only underneath the main vocal. They always sing this back to you, it's nice. And then the kind of track drops with the familiar kind of more me kind of sound to it. So basically, I just want to talk about the bass line for a second here. It's a sample. Basically, a lot of these kind of sounds that I've become known for, another guy's doing this kind of thing at the moment. A lot of those things are samples, but they're samples from mid to late 80s gear, so like DX7 or any of those kind of cheaper end of the old Yamaha synth. So any kind of FM synth from back then is going to give you real interesting sounds. So that is coming from a sample from an old DX100, which I'm sure you could probably pick a real one up for not very much now. But that's where the sample comes from anyway. And I remember writing this bass line. I wrote it myself using the keys. I didn't draw it in using all the MIDI and stuff. And kind of the part of the, not secret, part of the, I guess the kind of technique with this sort of music at the moment is that everything's got space. I mean, all good music should have space anyway. There shouldn't be lots of things clashing, and you know, that's why funk music's so good and reggae music is so good, because it's actually quite simple when you break it down, and there's not too much that's playing all at the same time. And it's kind of the same thinking with this. The bass is kind of quite percussive and fits around with the drums and stuff like that. So after I'd written the basic sort of bass line that had to move with that guitar change that I played earlier, I ended up with this. And I did have to go in and edit some notes and do all that kind of thing, but so that's just basically following the guitar sample. But it all kind of fits around the drums quite nicely. Let's just play from there. So quite a standard kind of arrangement with the percussion growing and sort of building.
And that sound is, that's just that sample, and there's no sub under that, or
no? It's just that sound. That bass sound it's got a bit of EQ on it. I've probably put something else on it in Logic, which I'll go to in a sec, because Reason's obviously rewired with Logic, and yeah, obviously I do stuff in there as well. But I've put like a spring delay on it. I just find it adds some character to it rather than just the normal delay with an old spring reverb. So they're the kind of things you get on old 60s guitar amps, and they're still on there now, on guitar amps now, and you can get just a lot more character out of a sound, I find, even on vocals and stuff as well. I'd recommend playing with it, and it's not the first thing everyone normally reaches for with reverb, so it's one of those things. But yeah, that literally is from that sample. It's got such a nice sort of sound to it anyway. It just worked really well. If I just move the track on a bit, there's nothing really too genius with the arrangement or anything like that. It does what it does. But you can hear there that kind of sort of trippy verse kind of going round that you can't quite hear properly. And there was a bit of EQing that had to go into that as well and stuff, so it didn't clash with my guitar looping round. All the frequencies are all the same frequencies are in there, but I just couldn't have them clashing or anything. One other thing I did in the breakdowns was put in a really, really low sub as well, which hopefully we'll pick up. It's so low, it's kind of just like for a club system, really. Actually, let me play it off the first. There, you can hear it there underneath. It literally is just a really, really low sub with a bit of encouragement at the low end there, you can probably see. And again, they're just things through, they're DJ things. They're things that you want to happen in a club environment, really. They're not that necessary if you're listening in MP3 player or whatever. But that's how I put together the XX remix, and it's really simple. And you know, respectfully, we went about it the right way and went to the artist and put it to them as soon as I'd done it, because these things get posted on YouTube and all these kind of things, and you end up with an email from someone's management saying, "Oi, what's going on here?" So from the outset, you know, as soon as it was done, we contacted them, we sent it to them, we said, "Look, this is what's going on. If you hear of it or hear about it, this is what it's all about. It's nothing, nothing dodgy going on." And in turn, they came back and said, "Fine, we like it, and we're happy for you to do a giveaway." So I think that's still on Accelerator as well. So if you haven't got a copy, you should be able to get it. So it's quite simple, and it's done from a stereo master of a track. You know, no remix parts. It literally was me being creative with how things were sort of layered and stuff. I guess one last thing to mention is this kind of weird analogy string, which kind of isn't there, but it's so slight, it's just kind of cutting in at the top there. So that's kind of all the workings of the track. As far as rewire goes, my drums all come in on their own in Reason. From Reason, sorry. Let me just set a little loop going.
So all your drum processing is done in Reason, if there is any. You don't add anything in Logic.
No, I always add stuff in Logic actually. What happens is each re-drum might have something on, like there's a maximizer on there, but that's just maximizing a cymbal at the moment, which is a bit boring. But anyway, no, I do some stuff, like for instance this loop that is on the intro, that's just got a real tight delay on it. That's it. If I turn it up, just to give it a bit of a little bit more character. So I do some in Reason, but the main things I do are always in Logic. So I've got my drums always go off on bus 10, that's on my auto load. And if I go to drum bus on here, so basically there's a limiter on there. I'm not big into the science of limiting and compression and all those things, and I probably break a lot of rules when I'm doing this. I just learned my own way with all this stuff. I've taught myself and I use my ears, and I think if you can do that in a dignified way, I think you're all right. I think people that really go crazy with limiting and compression, that don't understand it, you know, you need to be careful with it. So basically, where are we? Let's just set this in. So I've switched it all off here. So I put this Studer tape machine on to kind of give it some vibe. You know, these old machines kind of make things obviously very analog in their real life kind of form, and the UAD guys have done an amazing job with this Studer plugin, which does that with, you know, varying options of tape speed. Tape speed will change how it sounds, obviously, and the type of tape as well. You can probably see it changing on there if I flick through. So I just set it to something. I'm using my ears here, you know, plugins are great now, but I'm really using my ears rather than what I can see. So I've added some of that. That's without. Probably sounds okay as well. But that's it with the tape machine on. A little bit of EQ. I like the analyzer on the EQs rather than, I always have a maximizer, multimeter on as well. But to be honest, I get a much better idea what's going on by switching the analyzer on an EQ. Even if I don't use it to EQ anything, I like actually seeing it in that way. So I've given it a little bit of a boost. Classic with all my stuff is I have to go back in and boost sort of around 1K, 2K, and just as you can see here. And then there is a maximizer on the end, which works as a limiter, and it really just brings everything to sort of life. you know, that sound you get from the radio. Sometimes you listen to radio stations and you hear Radio 1, you're like, why doesn't that record sound like that when I'm playing it on my iPod or when I'm playing it in my car? And the reason is obviously they've got stacks and stacks of Magic BBC boxes that do this sort of stuff. So by sticking this on, it just kind of pushes the sound without over compressing it. Gives it shape. It says shape there, so it gives it shape. There you go. I'm not a scientist on these things, but yeah. So that's my drums anyway. And any drums I might add, which I haven't done here, in Logic as well. I just stick that through. So say this was drums, I would just go like that, stick that through the same channel. So I've got one drum mix basically. That's how that's working. And the bass, let me just check the bass sound because I was talking about that just now. I don't think, yeah, it's just coming through the reason, left and right. And I've put this Cooper time cube on there, which is something else I use a lot. I use this on vocals. I wouldn't use it on this because it's not a vocal stem on its own. But I use this to give a sound a bit of shape, a little bit of, you've obviously got on Logic like stereo spread and stuff like that. But I find using this, it's a real tight delay, like 16 milliseconds and 14 milliseconds on the other side, and just turn down low. And it's hard to kind of hear it, but maybe I hope you can on there because it makes a difference to the overall production. And then on my master, we were talking about this the other day because I work with this on. I've got another maximizer, and I work with this on while I'm writing because I find it is quite important to get a feel for the sound of the track whilst you're writing stuff. So rather than doing all that at the end when you're like mixing the track or whatever, I think it's important, like for me, creatively, to have that on. I want to feel that vibe of the track as I'm writing. I want to feel it like it might sound towards the end whilst I'm writing, because that's part of the inspiration for me. I think having it working really, really dry until like the end it just doesn't work for me. So I work with this on. And that's pretty much the XX Shadow Child VIP. We're there.
Hey guys, I'm Sebastian, also known as Moonlight Matters. Catch me next week in the studio with future music.